Welcome to a special edition of the 24th Floor. Richard Denson here riding solo with my co-host Ruben Diaz on vacation. So no R2-D2 today, just a little RD2. Now it's a day after Ole Miss's first ever college football playoff win. The scoreboard still says 41-10, but the bigger question today is what this win actually means. Not just for this season, but for this program, this staff, and what comes next. We've got reaction from players and coaches, and we're going to unpack how Ole Miss handled a historic moment and why it never felt close. So joining me now is a frequent friend of the program. He's been talking Ole Miss football with us all season long. You can't talk Ole Miss athletics without him. He's the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, which you can catch right here on the 24 Plus app, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcast. Mr. Stephen Willis, welcome on the program once again.
That's what I'm talking about. That was a pretty amazing game, right? It was one of those things that you watch and it just felt great. It was expected to be the biggest sporting event in the history of Mississippi, and somehow it exceeded expectations. It was amazing.
Absolutely. And so now I'm curious, we're almost 24 hours removed from the game. Yesterday feels a little distant from it. Just now 24 hours away, how do you just kind of feel and just wrap up everything? Because like you said, it was the biggest game in Mississippi history and Oxford history. It's something that like generations of Mississippians will hopefully remember for years to come.
Yeah, that was the type of game that grandparents are going to tell their grandkids about someday. Whenever like these 6 and 7 year olds, once they get old, they will tell people about that game. And it was absolutely monumental. It absolutely lived up. Now, it was the last real landmine that was on the schedule. If you would have lost to Tulane, it would have made the Pete Golding era and all that a little bit weird. But with the win, Georgia becomes a free shot. And this Ole Miss team, and I've said it on my show, this Ole Miss team just proved that they can win the national title. They got a hard road to go, but they can absolutely do it. And it's all because of what we saw in Oxford, Mississippi on Saturday.
Yeah, and so we look at about a lot of how everybody handled the moment. One soundbite I want to throw to is, of course, how the quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, handled it. Let's play the clip real quick.
It's a surreal moment. If you would have said this before the season, that I'd be the starting quarterback and I'd get Ole Miss their first playoff victory, I'd be like, you're crazy. But it's amazing.
So, Stephen, this moment felt big, but not overwhelming. What did you kind of see out of Trinidad when you look at his story? A guy who last year was in D2 in the national championship. They won that year, and he told us last night that Ferris State won again this year. He said he would have never imagined himself in this moment in that quote. What do you just kind of feel about him?
Well, it doesn't really sound like he actually believes himself on that one, because he played football in the college football playoff in that extremely charged moment to where everything was going. And he looked just as loose as he was in any other game whenever they played the Citadel, all of that stuff. He has been the same guy. And a lot of that has to do, in my opinion, with the fact that he made a national championship run with Ferris State, and there is an expectation. You know, they talk all the time. It's like football is football. If you can play, you can play. And Trinidad kind of falls into that category to where it makes a little bit of sense.
Now, I agree with that. He made it seem like he wasn't surprised to be there. And so there's something that I feel like has been a theme of this Ole Miss team is for a program that hasn't had this type of success, they seem like they've been so locked in, like this is an expectation. What do you think that comes from for them to have this type of bravado and confidence?
I think that the players were built for the moment in November. Whenever you saw them not getting distracted by all the noise in the background, that was probably a good sign of what is to come. And then when it actually happened, you had Pete Golding taking the job, and he's galvanizing that locker room and instilling belief in his players. And Pete Golding is, you know, I'm not going to say he has the easiest job in the world, but it probably is a fairly easy person to motivate somebody that has been abandoned right before the biggest moment of their athletic life. But all of those together, they come into the game against a team that you beat 45-10. So the only really thing that Pete had to do then was to make sure that you didn't overlook Tulane, which in the playoffs, you're not ever going to overlook anybody in the playoffs. And you have a situation where the game plan was built for Tulane already. You just had to tweak it a little bit. The game plan, honestly, has been built for Georgia. You just have to tweak that a bit as well. I think it's a little bit of a perfect storm as far as what needs to be prepared for, what the players are used to, how the players handled what was going on, and the fact that this moment has happened to where it is the biggest moment in Ole Miss program history. You put all of those together, it's kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what makes it more impressive is how easily they could have gone the other way. I want to get back into the history about this win and what it does for recruiting, because that's something that Ruben and I talked on the last show about how college football playoffs can be an elevator. But I think for Mississippi and in the SEC, when it is like a recruiting hotbed with the portal, we look a lot of times at a lot of people who come out of the state of Mississippi. Ole Miss doesn't necessarily get the best talent. Now, when you look on this team, some of the best Mississippi kids is Will Eccles. And we asked him about what this means for him being a Mississippi kid, if we can play the clip real quick.
It means everything because, like, can't nobody take this, like, a moment away from us. And, like, this team always going to be remembered in Ole Miss history.
So, Steven, I got to ask, going forward, do you think that Ole Miss should be the front runner for Mississippi kids to go to school there instead of going to another SEC school?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the longest time when Mississippi high school football wasn't quite as polished, quite as good back when in another lifetime in my younger days, Ole Miss and Mississippi State were constantly fighting over Mississippi kids, but they weren't quite at the level of getting the great ones. And anytime a great one came along, all of a sudden here's LSU, here's Alabama, here's Tennessee kind of coming into your backyard trying to swoop it up. Now Ole Miss is at a point, even with their, I don't know, not caring that much about high school recruiting, they still signed the last 4 number 1 players in the state of Mississippi. They just didn't sign many of them. I don't know if that is the way that Pete Golding is going to do. We have to wait and see what he will be like in recruiting before we can really judge that. But I think if you just look at the tea leaves, I think he is going to have more of an emphasis on Mississippi high school football recruiting, and he has brought in people like Frank Wilson, like LaDamian Washington, Austin Thomas, the former general manager at LSU. It feels like there is going to be a concerted push in Louisiana as well whenever Pete, who knows how they handle high school recruiting, he knows that he can swoop in and get some really good players.
Now, let's talk about Pete, because this guy, man, he has some sound bites for days that just kind of make me laugh. I kind of want to fast forward ahead to first, actually, let me backtrack a little bit and let's talk about the chaos that went into it. Obviously, we know Pete is taking over for Lane. I mean, if you asked him did he think that he was going to be in this position at the beginning of the season, I'm pretty sure he would have said no. Before, it just seemed like it was a whirlwind of him being the head man in charge. And when you normally see stuff like that in sports, Steven, this team had every excuse to wobble. I mean, look at here close to home in Memphis. Silverfield leaves. They have the interim takeover, and they got flummoxed by NC State. They got whooped 31-7. And I know it's different. It's not the college football playoffs, but you just kind of see sometimes when the interim takes over, a team can self-destruct. Why do you think that this team was so cohesive and staying together?
I think that, listen, Pete Golding's the type of coach that you didn't really think about but he was probably sitting in the back of the room taking notes on absolutely everything. And this is a guy that was the defensive coordinator at Alabama for 5.5 years, working directly under Nick Saban. I mean, that's not quite as long as the run that Kirby had, but that's probably a long defensive coordinator run, which means you understand and you've seen the principles of building a staff. You've seen how they handle situations, weird things. And remember, in 2014 or 15, I think it was 15, Lane Kiffin did similar things to this at the national championship game the week before when he was the offensive coordinator. Ended up getting fired by Nick Saban, and Nick Saban went directly to Steve Sarkisian, who was an analyst. That is two offenses that are very simple or similar. Those two offenses that would not be hard to pick up, and you could call those games realistically. It showed continuity, and Pete, I think, drew back on those experiences with Nick Saban at Alabama, and he wanted everything for the players to be as much routine-based as he could. The way the practice was in September, he wanted to make sure that that's the way practice is going to be in December and January. He wants to know the practice times are at least similar. The coaches that you're talking to are the same people. So the routine does not get flummoxed a little bit. And because of that, Pete Golding has the ability, in my opinion, to where you have all of these guys game planning for Georgia and beyond. Good football coaches, game planning there. But he's also essentially hired most of his staff for 2026, and all they're doing in the background is working on retention in the transfer portal before it even begins. He's done pretty close to about the best job that you can do over the past 2 weeks, seriously.
Do you think it also helps that he has an NFL guy on his staff like Joe Judge, a guy who's seen a lot, who's been there a lot, who can really help him navigate the waters of being a head coach?
I think so. And he's going to get more head coach experience when Frank Wilson comes on board. But in this era of NIL and rev share, since they're about to start rev share for the first time, Joe Judge is used to talking contracts after the season and all of that and looking, for lack of a better word, players as spreadsheet numbers from time to time. And so he can probably help us like, hey, you probably don't need to overpay that position because you can get two of them for that price and you can double up on this position that we actually need. All of the capology stuff Joe Judge has experience with, and he's probably a valuable resource to bounce ideas off of.
So going back to Pete, I want us to play this soundbite because it was something that stuck out to me, and I'm seeing it already get in the waves on social media. That dude is a hilarious guy. Can we roll the clip of what he had to say about the Pop-Tart Bowl?
I mean, it'd be one thing, no disrespect, like if this was the Pop-Tart Bowl or something like that shit would have been really hard, all right? But, I mean, this is the playoffs. I mean, that's what, like, people start talking about, are they going to play or are they not going to play? Like, what are we talking about? I mean, these kids have gone 11-1 up to this point, right, and had a home playoff game, first time in the history of the program. Like, these dudes want to compete. And just like I told them, they don't really care who runs them out the tunnel. That's the truth, right? They care about their preparation. They care about their plan. Are they getting developed? Are you increasing their value by coaching them really hard and holding them accountable? The head coaching piece is developing the staff, creating their culture, all those things that are off-season, summer-based. By this point in the season, right, the thing's running the way it should. Like, you just got to keep it on the tracks. And there's some things that we can add to it based on experiences that we've had and getting a feel of the team. Right, and there's some things that we could take away that I don't feel like impact winning or losing, that I'll let the team vote on whether we want to do that to a certain degree. And then there's some things I just believe in, right, and maybe he didn't. But we're not coming and reinventing it at this point in the year. And that's what I've said the whole time. Like, this reminds me of the COVID season, right, when Coach, I mean, we played the Iron Bowl. Coach ain't there. Right, he's got COVID. I mean, Sark ran him out the tunnel. I mean, we still beat the shit out of Auburn. I mean, it didn't matter, right? Because at that point in the year, right, it was already in place, going the way it's supposed to. I'm the work on the cussing thing. My bad.
He got a kick out of me. Now, I almost want to call Pete Mayor Pete, and I know that's reserved for another guy, but I think the reason why I gave him that nickname was because he seems already to be really a guy who endears himself to the public. Well, I saw a tweet that said, if Pete Golding's not cussing, then I don't trust anything he has to say. But I think I love how he mixed humor and honesty, and he's just real. What do you like about Pete so much?
I mean, you listen to him for like 2 sentences, and you can see why he's one of the best recruiters in the entire country. I mean, you just sit there and want to smile. You're listening to him. You're laughing. You're completely listening to what he's saying because he only seems to give information that is actual valuable and can help whatever's going on. It's not like what was at Ole Miss before, to where something can be said for 5 minutes and there's 3 words that are actually meaningful. Man, Pete Golding, he holds court whenever he has press conferences. You know, you said Mayor Pete. It might be more than that. It might be royalty stuff, because he sits on the podium and everybody's just locked into what he's saying. And whenever he's talking, it's like, man, that makes so much sense. That's so understandable. But you can just see why he's a great recruiter, a great coach, because he's an effective communicator and he's somebody that you want to listen to. And I think Pete can weaponize that with the lessons that he has learned from Coach Saban, with the lessons that he has learned in all of his years of coaching football. And he has a chance to be very, very successful. And he's going to need it, because coming up here in about 9 days or something like that, pretty big monster. The only team that beat Ole Miss on all of that. There's going to be a Sugar Bowl. We're going to play that game, and we'll see exactly how it goes, but it's there. But I will say this. The Tulane game was the last roadblock on the schedule, and this is a free shot.
See,
the rest of the season. Yeah.
I tried to get Pete to lean into that Georgia matchup, but you know how they are. I mean, he didn't commit to coach speak, but he said the typical, we'll focus on this win tonight and really relish it, and then we'll be back tomorrow morning. Staying in on Pete, I know a big question, and you know he kind of addressed a little bit in that soundbite we just played, was about kind of some of the changes. An interesting thing I'm not sure you noticed, Stephen, was we didn't see the basketball hoop out there for every time they scored. And I was like, okay, well, what was that all about? So Pete said that he had asked the players what was one thing they liked and what was one thing that they changed. And I guess the consensus was no hoops. So we asked Deuce about that and how he felt about that. Let's roll the clip real quick.
Just like he wanted to know our opinions, and I seen him write everything down and people were saying, and he changed a lot of things that people were saying. So it just felt great just to have a coach that listened to you and just wants what's best for you.
What did you kind of make of that? You know, no basketball, kind of the cleats changing. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the basketball go on the sideline makes no sense to me. It never has. It always felt a little bit performative to me, if I was going to be honest. So Ole Miss used that basketball goal and all of that to brand themselves as fun. Look, they're doing this. They're doing 360 dunks on the sideline. Hey, there's a little kid with a fire extinguisher jumping around. I don't think we saw that during the game as well.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that Pete says, you know, anything that affects winning or the players think affect winning are not going to be messed with at all. Anything that's outside of that, anything that's extra, that's where we're going to put the focus back on winning football games. And the basketball goal, which was an injury risk, if we're going to be honest. I think Xavier Harris dunked the ball and broke the basketball goal early in the season. He fell down.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, if he would have gotten hurt over that, can you imagine the outrage that would happen over a basketball goal on the court? And they had a basketball hoop inside the meeting room that they would just randomly have 3-point shooting contest in the middle of a team meeting. And okay, whatever, it's fun. The basketball players and football players get into it just a little bit, but it doesn't affect winning, and it's a way to get yourself hurt, if we're going to be completely honest. And I think the basketball goal needed to go. If we're just going to be real, the basketball goal needed to go, because every time a player jumped up and did a 360, I could see them spraining an ankle, coming down.
Tearing Achilles. You just never know what could happen. I'm a basketball guy, so like I thought it was cool, but I agree. It's crowded on that sideline as somebody who's going back and forth. There was one time I think I was covering a game, I almost bumped into a player as he was going to go dunk a basketball because I just wasn't paying attention. So I agree. There's been a lot of talk about Lane Kiffin's offense. I know we talked about it on our show this week, this most recent show we had, about Charlie Weiss coming back. And even though Lane wasn't coaching, it was almost like, okay, his disciple, Charlie Weiss, was there. How important was it for this staff to own that moment as far as Charlie Weiss running things?
Well, the funny thing is Charlie Weiss has been the play caller this whole time. The offense runs too fast for it not to be. Just to let everybody know the operation, let's say Charlie Weiss gives a play to Trinidad Chambliss, who runs the play, 10-yard pass completion to Deuce Alexander. And the moment the ball is caught, Charlie Weiss is telling Trinidad the next play so they can go up and run tempo. The offense runs so fast that there's not a lot of time for a conglomeration. Now, the one thing that Lane could do, and one thing that it was really good at doing, was the shot plays. And that would be whenever they slow it down and look to the sideline or he whistles. And that's probably 5 or 6 plays over the course of the game. The rest of it's all Charlie Weiss, and I think everybody saw that in the game this weekend. The offense looked like it always has, and that's because the same person is calling those plays.
And I remember going into it, I thought, well, if Lane's not there, Charlie could be there still to kind of like poach the players. But then once you told me you're loyal to the paycheck and stuff like that, it was like, okay, now this really is a Charlie Weiss showcase, because I do hear, like, all we do here is Lane Kiffin's offense. And Pete said it. Charlie couldn't afford to not call a hell of a game. So for him to go out there and show, like, hey, man, this is me doing this. Lane is just the mouthpiece. I was very impressed, I should say.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. Pete Golding said he had no worries about Charlie Weiss because Charlie Weiss, there was pressure on him to have a great game. And he had to lock in and do what he needed to do. Charlie Weiss, honestly, if we're going to be honest, real about it, Charlie Weiss by himself as the offensive coordinator needs to beat Georgia. If he beats Georgia, think about what that would look like. And the one thing where you lost to Georgia with Lane, you beat Georgia without him, think about what that would look like for anybody recruiting Charlie Weiss to be an offensive coordinator, or when Charlie wanted to break out and be his own guy.
I think Charlie Weiss will be like a head coach sooner than later. I was surprised that he wasn't in this American Conference thing. I was thinking somebody like a South Florida or a Tulane would have scooped him up. And I was surprised that he followed Lane to LSU, just like I was surprised Lane was able to keep Blake Baker. I thought Blake Baker was going to take the Tulane job, but I digress.
It is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the Tulane job was weird because I think Blake Baker wanted that job, but something happened to where he wasn't going to get the NIL help he thinks he needed or something like that. And whenever that number didn't hit, all of a sudden LSU was paying him $3 million a year.
Yeah.
So that's the reason he went back to Baton Rouge.
We were talking about that a lot at the game yesterday. I was talking to a lot of the New Orleans media members. I was like, yeah, what happened with Blake? So that kind of makes sense. Let's get back to Tulane. It seems like at the beginning of the game, it looked like it was going to probably go how I thought. I knew Ole Miss was going to come out and dominate offensively in the beginning, but I kind of gave Tulane the respect more that when they had the ball, that they would kind of get it done. And it seemed in the beginning it looked like that. Like they would get across the 50, but then they would turn the ball over, whether throwing an interception or fumbling the ball. Why do you think Tulane stalled every time that mattered?
Because Ole Miss has better players on the offensive and defensive line, specifically the defensive line. If it got to a short yardage situation ever and Ole Miss knew a run was coming, if you remember, Tulane couldn't get a yard, couldn't get an inch. All that Tulane had is the element of surprise. Their best weapon was first down, where they could throw the ball, run the ball, and all of that, and kind of catch Ole Miss out. Because if it was 3rd and 2, and Ole Miss was knowing that you're going to try and run Jake Retzloff or hand it off to the tailback, Ole Miss ate them alive. It was all because Tulane needed the element of surprise against Ole Miss. Because if Ole Miss knew what you were doing, you didn't have any chance, because that defensive line can be really, really good.
I agree. Let's also listen to what co-defensive coordinator Brian Brown and linebacker TJ Daugherty had to say. Roll the clip, please.
I think our guys did a really good job, just responding to the 4th down challenges we face, this game. We talked about it all week in practice. That was the turning point of the game last game as well. So our guys were really focused on 4th down, and I think we got some big bodies up front, with Big Zay and Big Will and those guys. They did a really good job pushing the pocket back.
When we get to those moments on 4th down, critical down, executing the play call, because it's really not about the play, it's just executing the every 1-11 job at that point.
Now, two things I want to say. One, I think we're seeing a lot more of Brian Brown, which is something that I like because we haven't really seen a lot of him, so we're kind of getting to know more about the guys behind the defense. And also something from TJ, what I noticed, and just the defensive players, is even though they played outstanding, they kept saying that they didn't play their best. So what did you make out of that?
Little bit of rust because they've played. Remember, Ole Miss has only played one game in like the last 5 weeks before this game. They needed this game to kind of knock the dust off so they could get ready for the Georgia Bulldogs. And former Ole Miss legend Bill Flowers comes on my show every single week, and he talks about how the players hate bye weeks. They absolutely despise them because when you come back, it is always hard to get back into a rhythm. He talked about a game he played back in 2003 when Ole Miss was 6-0 going into the LSU game at the end of the season. If Ole Miss wins the game, they're going to Atlanta. But Ole Miss was coming off a bye week the week prior, and it took, he said, 2.5 quarters to kind of get in rhythm. But by that point, it was already too late. And that's honestly something I'm going to harp on the next 9 days or so, is that Georgia hasn't played a ball game since December 4th.
Yeah.
This will be Ole Miss's first game. So Georgia's the team coming off the bye week with the month layoff going into this game. And last season, remember, nobody that had bye games won their round of the playoff. It was all people that played in these home games beat the team that had a bye last season. And I think that is something we need to focus on as this moves forward, because Georgia essentially having a, quote, bye and all of that happening gives Ole Miss the advantage going into this game for especially a quick start. And if you remember last game, if Georgia has a slower start offensively than they did last game, Ole Miss has the same start. All of a sudden, it might be a 16-point lead. It might be a 23-point lead, and the game's over.
So now I got to ask you, Steven, because now we're getting into this crunch time. Does this win over Tulane and their dominance Ole Miss had, does this change how you feel about the Georgia rematch?
Ole Miss was a 4th and 2 stop in the fourth quarter away from getting the ball back on Georgia's 40-yard line in a game that they had scored touchdowns the previous 5 drives up by 9 points. It is not out of the realm of possibility to say if Ole Miss gets that ball carrier down in the backfield, which they had him, the running back made a great play to get a first down, but if Ole Miss gets him down and Ole Miss goes and scores a touchdown, that game's over. And that was in Athens.
Yep.
If you can make that tackle, if the defense can play a little bit better, because the defense played horribly in Athens, Georgia. Trinidad had a horrible fourth quarter. If you remember, there was a lot of passes that were just off target.
Down at the line, too.
Yeah. If you just clean that stuff up, Ole Miss can win. And you don't have the benefit of going in there and 95% of the people are yelling at you because the game's in Athens. Instead, it's going to be in New Orleans, and that's going to be 55-60% probably Ole Miss fans in the Superdome as well. So, yeah, Ole Miss can beat Georgia.
So it's so much to unpack out of that. First off, I want to get our last soundbite that we have in. We obviously, like I said, Golden wouldn't take my bait when I asked him about the Georgia game, but TJ did. Let's roll the clip.
Honestly, right after the game and we lost, I kind of figured we were going to have another shot at them, not knowing when, but what better opportunity than now.
All right, so being honest, I kind of in the back of my head thought that next opportunity was going to be in the SEC championship game because I knew A&M was going to lose to Texas, and I kind of thought Bama was going to lose to Auburn. So during the SEC championship game, you know, I'm from Atlanta, so I was back home for the holidays. I was sitting there thinking like, oh, I can't wait for Ole Miss to be at Mercedes-Benz, and then Bama pulled it out. But what, like TJ said, what better opportunity than the college football playoffs where it's win or go home? So when you look at a defense that did not force a punt and how much that has to be aggravating, because that Georgia game, Steven, is the game that makes people not believe that Ole Miss can win it. Because as good as their offense is, it showed that the defense isn't there to stop a premium elite team. Now, like you said, being back in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. I was talking to the guys, and I have my history with the Sugar Bowl and Ole Miss from when I was in college at Oklahoma State, and Ole Miss beat the piss out of Oklahoma State. Just being back there now where it really matters, what do you just think about it all, about the opportunity?
Well, if you remember how this season goes, and not many people are going to remember this, but Ole Miss in the first half of the season was playing a lot of rush 3, drop 8, the stuff that they did against LSU, against Tulane the first time. It worked against them because they haven't played anybody that can run you out of that look. And Georgia absolutely ran Ole Miss out of that look, and they just kind of unlocked Ole Miss's defense. After that game, Ole Miss went up to Oklahoma and started playing aggressive, really aggressive defensively, going more four-man fronts. They got a safety in that game on a running play, and all of a sudden Ole Miss's run defense got a lot better towards the end of the season, to the point where by the end of the year, they were a top 25 scoring defense in the entire country. That aggressiveness, the defense that Ole Miss is going to put out against the Georgia Bulldogs this time, it's not the same defense that they played against Georgia in Athens. It's going to be the same players, but you're going to see a lot more even fronts. You're going to see them line up to stop the run. They know what's happening. They're not going to be surprised by the extreme physicality that Georgia plays with, because Georgia does play with this extreme physicality. This is going to be a game that you're going to have to play extremely hard, and there's going to be a ton of contact and all of that stuff. You have to set your mind right, essentially, to get ready for what's coming, because if not, Georgia's extreme physicality will surprise you and get the better of you. Now, Ole Miss, this is the simplest game on the schedule. I said this the last time that Ole Miss played Georgia. If you stop the run, you beat Georgia. That's it. The hard part is stopping the run, because they are very good at what they do. But if Ole Miss can make it work, to make Gunnar Stockton beat you through the air without a running game, it could look a lot similar to what Carson Beck looked at in Oxford, Mississippi. It's going to be about Ole Miss stopping the run. That's going to be the most important thing in this game.
All right, Stephen, we're getting into our final 2 minutes. Now, we're not going to have another 24th Floor episode this coming week, so I'm going to skip, or I don't think we may not have one the last week of December. So I'm going to just do our Bluff City lines now, and I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you predict for this game? I don't know if the lines are out as far as the spreads and the over-unders, so we'll just keep it simple. Pick a winner right now. Do you think Ole Miss pulls it off, or do you still got Georgia?
I think Ole Miss is going to win the game. There have been 4 times where rematches or something like that has happened in the Sugar Bowl, or maybe SEC conference plays. But every time it's been a rematch, the team that won in the regular season lost in the Sugar Bowl. So I expect Ole Miss to continue that trend and beat the Georgia Bulldogs in New Orleans.
I agree, Stephen. Well, Stephen, we are running out of time. What we can agree on, Ole Miss didn't just win a playoff game. They showed they could handle history, and they will get another chance to prove it. Before we go, Stephen, tell us real quick what you're working on over there at the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
Oh, we are getting ready for the transfer portal, obviously the Sugar Bowl, and we're doing our best to talk about basketball with a smile on our face right now. But it's a good time. Come join us at Locked On Ole Miss on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Stephen. A special thank you to Andrew Pollard stepping in and helping this thing get off the ground this Sunday. Once again, people, no 24th Floor episode on Christmas Eve, because Ruben and myself will be on Christmas vacation. But thank you for tuning in to this special 24th Floor. Me and Stephen will see you later.